Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to make money within property. So essentially how to make short-term and long-term income from property. To be honest, I'm quite surprised that I haven't made a video like this sooner, but anyway, here I am. So let's get into it. Right, so the first thing that I want to do is talk you guys through exactly the different types of property strategies that you can use to make money in property. Number one, you've got your standard buy to let. So essentially this is where you buy a property and then you rent it out to tenants. In this way, you're making monthly passive income, okay? The monthly passive income that you're able to pocket away each month is essentially the difference between what you charge your tenants as rent minus what your monthly mortgage payments are going to be. So that is, for example, if you are charging your tenants £1,500 in rent each month and your monthly mortgage payments are £1,000, that means you're able to pocket away the £500 that remains after the mortgage has been paid, and also minus any other like additional maybe costs that you incur in the month if you have to fix anything or just anything like that. But essentially the £500 is what you're going to have to pocket. Right, another way that you can make money from a buy-to-let property is when you do go on to sell the property. So I'll give another example. If you bought a property for £100,000 and then let's say in 5 or 10 years time you decided to sell the property and it's now worth £150,000, that property has increased in value by £50,000, and that is essentially your money to walk away with once the property has been sold. That is because once you've paid all your debts, that is everything that you've borrowed from the bank or the lender, the money that remains after that is yours. So that is that £50,000 that the property has increased in value by. Make sense? Second, HMOs. So this is essentially like a house share sort of situation. It's pretty similar to a buy-to-let in the sense that you are buying the property to rent out to tenants, but you're not renting out to one single household, but rather you're renting out to individuals within a house. So HMO actually stands for house of multiple occupancy. So this is whereby if I was to buy a 3-bedroom house, for example, I would rent it out to 3 different individuals, 3 different professionals, for example, rather than one household. In this way, I'm able to increase the amount of rent that I can potentially get from the property. This is because if I was to rent a 3-bedroom house to a household, I may only be able to get, let's say, £1,500. But if I rent the same 3-bedroom house to 3 individuals that live together in a shared household situation, I could maybe charge them all £700 per room. So in that way, I'm able to make £2,100 per month. Can you see the difference? Can you see why it may be more worthwhile, you know, renting out your property as a HMO rather than a standard buy-to-let? You can, right? And this is definitely why a lot of property investors are much more into HMOs than renting out to a single household, because there's so much potential to make a lot more money that way. So bringing back the mortgage into the picture, if your monthly mortgage repayments are £1,000 each month, but you're getting £2,100 in rental payments within this HMO, then you're able to pocket £1,000 away after your mortgage has been paid. That's for you to pocket. That is your monthly passive income. So it's a no-brainer. You can see why people are choosing HMOs over standard buy-to-lets nowadays. Strategy number 3, rent to rent. So you may have heard this term being thrown around, and essentially rent to rent is great if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of capital or you can't afford to put down quite a, a lump sum for a deposit for a house just yet. And the reason why it's so good is because rent to rent affords people the ability to be able to get into property and make monthly passive income from property without having to own a house yourself. This is because you essentially become like a tenant for a landlord and then you rent out to subtenants. Right, so let me just break it down a little. In a rent-to-rent situation, you've got like 3 people like in the whole chain. So you've got the landlord, who's the one that obviously owns the property and is renting out their property as a whole. Then you've got the tenant, which would be you if you're the person trying to, form a partnership with this landlord to rent out their property. And then you've got your subtenants, which would essentially be like a HMO sort of situation. So let's say I'm the tenant in this situation, and then I manage to get some subtenants. If I'm able to collect, £500 from each of them, and let's say it's a 3-bedroom house, that is £1,500 that I'm collecting from them, okay? And going back to the overall landlord, he's expecting £1,000 worth of rent each month. That means I, as the tenant who's managing the subtenants, I'm able to pocket £500 each month for myself as my own passive income from the property. You see how it works? So it's almost like you're taking the responsibility, or well, you are taking the responsibility of managing the property away from the landlord. So in that way, they don't need a letting agent to do anything. They're giving all that responsibility to you. Right, number 4, serviced accommodation. So this is essentially like your Airbnb, and like, you know when you can rent out like apartments for like a couple of nights or for like vacations and things like that. So this is pretty much similar to your buy to let or your rent to rent or your HMO, in the sense that you're getting residual monthly passive income from it. But the only thing about serviced accommodation is the fact that it's more of a seasonal thing. So that is, there are going to be months in a year where you're busy and then you're getting people staying in your property for a couple of nights, for weeks, or even, months. But then there will also be periods where it's void and it's quiet. Now, essentially, the way these void periods are offset is because with serviced accommodation, you're able to charge more of a premium than you would do if you're renting out your property on a standard tenancy agreement. So, for example, we know that on Airbnb, to book an apartment for 2 or 3 nights can cost you like, 200, 300 pounds. Whereas if this was like a standard, rental agreement between you and a tenant, they would not be paying you, 200, 300 pounds for 2 nights in your house. In fact, their rent for the month is about, 1,000 pounds, for example. So you can see how you can make a lot more money in the short term with serviced accommodation versus your standard like rental agreement with a tenant. Strategy number 5, deal sourcing. So this is essentially another technique for you to get into property investing and making money through property without having capital of your own to invest, okay? So deal sourcing is essentially whereby you find good property deals. So let's say, for example, you're able to find a property that's worth £200,000, but you can get the seller to sell it to you for £150,000. That is a good deal. And a lot of investors will pay you good money to source those kind of deals for them and to hand them over to them. So what you can do as a deal sourcer is package those kind of deals and then sell them on to investors who will pay you thousands of pounds for those. Can you imagine getting thousands of pounds just for finding properties that you can pass on to an investor? That's essentially what it is, and people are making really good money from doing this. Before you know it, you would have built up the capital to be able to buy your own properties. Right, the final strategy that I want to talk about is buying and flipping. So this is one that you might want to get involved in, maybe at a later stage in your property journey. And this is essentially where you buy properties for, considerably quite cheap or a lot cheaper than the asking price, and then you fix them up and then you go on to sell them, okay? So the beauty in buying and flipping is the fact that if you're able to buy a house for really cheap, for example, let's say you buy a house for £70,000, yeah, and then you do it up and then you're able to sell the property for £120,000, for example, okay, minus all the work. Let's say the work costs you £20,000, so let's say then you've spent £90,000 on doing up that property and buying it. That means you've made yourself £30,000 in profit just by buying it, doing that quickly, and then going on to sell it within a few months. I'm sure you can see why people get into this property investment strategy also. I mean, it's definitely not for everyone because it will be quite a bit of work. So you're going to have to make sure that you've got, contractors who know what they're doing. You're going to have to spend some time figuring out what you want to do with the property, what kind of works are required, figuring out all the costs, all the materials you're going to need, all that kind of stuff. So it is, it can be pretty hands-on. And so if you're not somebody that's ready to be hands-on, maybe this type of property strategy is not for you. However, if you don't mind doing stuff like that, then it could be a lot of fun and you're potentially able to make quite a lot of money from doing it also. So those are the property strategies. Well, those are the ones that I believe that for a newbie or someone that's trying to get into property investing as more of a beginner would be worthwhile for you. There are a lot more property strategies out there, but I feel like those are a bit more advanced and not something that I can really speak on at this point. So I know I've spoken about, the different property strategies and how you can make, residual monthly income, so your short-term income. But I haven't spoken too much in terms of the long-term income that you can make from property. And this is more focused on like your capital gains and, equity that you're able to build in a property. Right, so equity. What is equity in a property? Equity is essentially the capital appreciation in a property.
So, for example, let's say I bought a house for £100,000. If in 5 years' time it is now increased in value to £150,000, if I then go on to sell it, that means I've gained £50,000 in equity because it has increased in value by £50,000. So when I do go and sell that house, that is my gain, that is my profit.
Right, so now that we've identified what equity is and the importance of building up equity in a property, now we need to be able to focus on how to use this to our advantage to build up our property portfolios and make more money in the long term. Once you've purchased a property, you want to keep an eye on it to see how it increases in value. Once it's increased by a decent enough amount, you want to refinance that property. That is, take out some equity from it. Why do you want to do that? Because you want to then go and use that to invest in another property and gradually increase your portfolio, okay? That's why people always make mention about getting your first property, or how important it is just to get that one property, because honestly, it's a stepping stone. Once you have one property, that is your source, that is your basically foundation to build up a portfolio. That is because once you have one, you give it a while, and then you're able to refinance and get another property. And then the second property, you do the same thing. You let it increase in value for a little bit, and then you go on and refinance to take out the money to go and buy another property. And that is essentially how you build up your portfolio, okay? Right, so now I'm just going to focus on 2 areas that I feel that you should pay special attention to in order to build up a property business, and basically make sure that you're able to increase the equity in your property a lot quicker. So the first is buying below market value. So this is essentially the ability to be able to buy a property about maybe 25% below the value that it's been advertised for. So for example, if a property has been advertised for about £200,000, if you're able to get it for £150,000, that would be great, and that is essentially buying a property below market value. This gives you the ability to be able to refinance so much quicker. I mean, just think about it. If the property is worth £200,000 and you bought it for £150,000, that's already £50,000 equity sitting there already, okay? Imagine cashing in on that. You can take that money and go and use to invest in another property just like that, without you having even done much work to it or having to do anything to it. Now, I know this sounds all well and good, but honestly, this is all down to being able to get motivated sellers, okay? You won't be able to get these kind of deals if you don't have really motivated sellers. And motivated sellers are essentially people that want to sell their house as soon as possible for a number of different reasons. It may be because they've got something else going on in a different area, so essentially they need to sell here so they can pack up and go to a new house that they've bought. Or maybe, you know, they're a young family and, you know, they've just found a school for their kids that is in one area and they need to quickly move over there. I mean, it could be for a number of different reasons. It could be anything. But once you've got a truly motivated seller, you'll be surprised at the kind of deals that you'll be able to get. So number 1, buy below market value. Number 2 is property renovation, okay? So this is a great way to instantly increase equity in a property and to increase its value. By renovating a property, you're instantly adding value. So this could be via, you know, adding an additional room, maybe converting, you know, one flat into 2 flats by, you know, splitting it vertically. It could be, I don't know, converting a loft into a room. It could be extending it, you know, adding a conservatory or something like that. It could be anything, okay? But once you're able to add value to a property, you're instantly increasing its value. And again, this will enable you to be able to refinance, get some money out of that property, and then put that into investing into another property. So these are 2 main areas that I believe that as a property investor, you should really focus on to enable you to be able to make the most of your money and basically advance and build your property portfolio, okay? So I hope you guys have found this video useful. Please do comment down below which tips you found the most useful and if you'll be implementing any. Please do let me know if you have any other property strategies that you're aware of that I haven't mentioned in the video. Please do let me know. And as always, if you have enjoyed this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. Please do also subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. It definitely does help me. And as always, I will catch you next week. Bye.